Welcome to the second episode of Musket Mondays uh, with me, Shane, or Longland67. I was asked by one of the lads Thomas X, to perhaps do a few tutorials, which I was more than happy to, and I was intending to start tutorials. And the fact I was asked before you could even start before I start one shows that made me more than happy. So he asked me would I show how I paint up Napoleonic British troops. So I'm going to go through in this tutorial. So the first part, I'm going to break it into segments. The first part is going to focus on the face and hair and like all the flesh areas, and then the second part is going to deal with the uniform and equipment, because this is my second time making this video, and well, I lost a segment of it, so instead of trying to explain parts that were missing, I just said I'll do it again. So I'll explain everything you're going to need, all the paints. So just I've every paint and every brush that I use for painting this type of scale model. So which I'll go into one by one and explain why and various reasons why I use them over certain things. So first things first, the models come from Perry Miniatures, or Perry Miniature, which they're a fabulous metal and plastic company that specialises in wargaming figures, from everything from 100 Years' War right up to World War II. Some amazingly detailed models, even for like my fellow model makers, as well as who may not be into wargaming and just want to try to pick up some subjects to try their painting skills with different eras. They're well worth a look. So www.perryminiatures.com is where they're located. I'll put a link in the description. So their box set is the British Line Infantry, or British Napoleonic Line Infantry 1808 to 1815. It allows you to model either the Peninsular War, which is 1808 to 1814, which this chap is. He's modelled as a Connaught Ranger, the 88th Regiment of Foot, or the Devil's Own, and these were an Irish regiment raised from men from the west of Ireland. So hence the name Connaught Rangers, or Connaught Rangers, so I say. So the and it also allows you to model the 100 Days campaign, which would concludes with the Battle of Waterloo, which effectively ends the Napoleonic War. You get 40 miniatures in the box for just about €23, which is a fabulous price. So they're well worth a look. Again, I'll have a link to their page down in the description. We'll just talk quickly about the figure. Anything that I do, he's built out of the box, but all I added was, you can see, I added some patches, sewn on patches to his uniform, to the trousers, and all that is Tamiya tape, cut to random shapes, stuck onto the model, and then a thin amount of super glue was just brushed over it with a toothpick to lock it in. So that's all that is. So we'll have a look at what we're going to need. We'll talk about paintbrushes first. For this scale, 28mm, which is roughly it's debatable. Some people say it's 1:60, and others say it's 1:54 or 56. So either way, it's quite a small model. A 35 scale model will dwarf this. So the three main brush sizes I use, three main brush sizes I use are all from Winsor & Newton, from the Cotman range. So for general painting and block work, I use a 111 series Cotman number 3 round. So I use that for my general painting, blocking work. For fine detailing, I use a 113 Cotman 0, so for webbing and whatnot and buttons. And then for very fine work, I use a Cotman 000. So for painting eyes and the like. Okay, so there are those three brushes. They're a little bit pricey. They're about anything from 8 to 11 euro a bloody brush, but they last a long time. Okay, I'm going to talk about the paints that we'll be using. In this segment we'll only be using 3 paints for the flesh, so we'll talk about these first. So that's what we'll be using. So we'll be using, for the base the flesh, we'll be using Vallejo Model Color Dark Flesh 70927. As a highlight we'll be using a mix of Flat White 70951, again model colour, and finally model colour Sunny Skin Tone 70845. And then for shadows and washes we'll be using Artist Watercolour, so acrylic watercolour. You can use oil if you want, but I use acrylics because it's just a bit quicker and easier to control for this type of work. And we'll be using Burnt Sienna, which is a lovely rusty red colour, great for adding kind of complexion and makes the flesh look alive and healthy. So this is from the Dollar Rooney range, Aqua Fine 221 Burnt Sienna. So that's just for the skin, so that's what you'll need for this part alone. But we'll go through now the rest of the paints that we'll be using for the rest of the equipment and uniform. For the uniform we'll be using Citadel colours, which are the GW brand paints. So for the base, for the red coat, or the red tunic, we'll be using Mephiston Red. It's a lovely deep vibrant red, kind of almost a scarlet. As a highlight we'll be using Blood Red. Now this is from their old range, but I think they're still called Blood Red, so kind of a very rich red. And then for highlights we'll be using Evil Sun Scarlet. I think this is kind of like a scarlety, but it's more like an orange than a scarlet, and we'll be using this in small amounts to highlight only the creases and the like. And then following on with the Vallejo, you'll also need to do the collars and cuffs, because the Conic Rangers, their facings are yellow. We'll be using Avalanche Sunset. I think they might have a new name for this now, so you'll be looking at deep mustardy yellow. For doing the likes, for highlighting the black and the cartridge box and doing the bedroll for their backpacks, we'll be using Dark Reaper. It's like a real deep grey. For doing gold work we'll also be using Citadels Gehenna Gold. Now I think they've changed the name, so you're kind of looking for kind of like a coppery old gold for that. I don't like going too bright. Actually there's another colour there I'm missing. For the buttons we'll also be using, sorry, I apologize, I thought I had it laid out. We'll also be using Iron Belcher, or like or alternatively Vallejo Oily Steel is a good composite for this. So that'll be for buttons and for the weapons. Now for other elements, for the haversack that hangs off the hip, for highlighting that, so I like sorry, it's starting to rain a bit heavy, so I have to speak up over the noise. So to highlight the webbing and make it look more like a canvas, I normally give it kind of like a stone grey, very light kind of highlight, kind of glaze. We'll discuss that when we get to it. For the weapon, I like to use English Uniform. It's a good colour, put a wash over it and then come back to it and highlight it with a light brown to kind of get some wood grain effect. Again, we'll cover that when we get to that part of the tutorial. I should have mentioned earlier, the entire model will be undercoated in black. I'm going to actually airbrush mine black, and that will be the only element of the model I'll airbrush. The rest will be brush painted. So I'm just assuming that you might have spray can primer, or alternatively you can just do it by brush. So this is flat black. To undercoat the grey areas, I like to undercoat them in neutral grey, again model colour. And then to highlight the first highlight for the grey area is a sky grey, and sometimes I just leave it at sky grey. I very rarely take it up to white, because it's more convincing because it looks faded. And then finally, to seal the model, I'll be using matte varnish from Vallejo. There's one thing I do not have shown here, and that's the main wash I use is Citadel's Argrat's Earthshade. It's a lovely kind of brown Earthshade, as the name might suggest, wash. If I can't use that, I might just use 502 Octolong Shadow Brown, or just a burnt umber wash might work well too. But normally Argrat's Earthshade is what I normally use, and if I can find some lying around in my, I might find a little lying around, I'll use that. Okay? So, the first stage will be to undercoat this model completely in black, and then we'll begin with the flesh areas, and we'll take it from there. Okay? So, first jobs first, let's undercoat it, and then we'll continue. Okay, so we've undercoated the model black, and I've just began to add the base coat for the flesh areas, which is model color dark flesh 70927. I just put a few drops of it into my palette. I mixed a little bit of water into it just to give it a bit of a flow, and I'm applying it with my number 3 Cotman, or just a kind of a medium bristled brush. Doesn't have to be too neat, as in we're going to be coming back when we do the uniform anyway, so we'll be tidying up any mistakes. Okay, so add a little bit more water into my mix. Off camera, this is a piece of kitchen roll. I'm just dabbing the excess paint off my brush, because we don't want to flood the model with paint either. The trick with painting is to slowly layer paint instead of trying to plaster paint on. So we have the base coat. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to clean off my brush. Another thing, if you're using this is what I'm talking about now, since if you're any of the wargamers out here that might be watching this video, and this will apply especially to wargamers rather than model makers, even though the techniques are cross-compatible. Often wargamers will model in batches. When I'm doing my armies for black powder and bolt action, I do in batches of 4. And keep in mind when you're working with Vallejo especially, it's best to put a few drying retardant into the paint, just to slow down the drying time. That's what I put. So just keep that in mind, because this will dry out on you very quickly. It's cold here, it's been snowing, it's a cold evening, so the paint will last quite a bit in this environment, but if you're from a warmer environment, keep that in mind. So just a couple of, maybe a few drops of retardant into it. It tints the paint a little bit as well. To put a few drops of water just to get the consistency back the way you want it, and we're good to go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to let this coat dry, and then apply another one on top of it, so we'll be back in a moment. Okay, so what I did was just to speed up the drying process, I just took my airbrush with no paint in it and just blasted air onto the model to allow the paint to dry a bit quicker, or just enough so I can put another layer on without it contaminating. So we'll just put another layer of dark flesh on, just to get a nice even coat. Okay, and then the face. This is a bit of a new experience painting with a camera under my snout, but it's the best way for you guys to see and follow what's happening. Well, there you go. So next step now, which I'll talk about while this is drying because I won't be able to do it and I'll just save a bit of time in the next video, is we'll add the shadows. So we'll be using just 3 colours for this entire sequence. So the dark flesh that we've been using already. Okay, and the next part of the sequence is where we'll be using a 4th colour, which is this. This is the artist acrylics that I was talking about. Alternatively, you could use a flesh wash if you had it, like Flaho's Model Games flesh wash. I've been using this for years. I use it for all my different scale stuff, from 35th scale right up and right down to 72. This is burnt sienna. You can either use acrylic or oil. I have oils as well, but I prefer, for my figures I prefer to use acrylics for the faces, just for the quick drying time. That's for the only reason, and because it's a bit cheaper. Yes, I am cheap. So what we'll do with this is we'll just mix this in with a bit of water on the palette and then apply it to the entire face and hands. Let that dry for a little bit, just that it's about 80% dry, and then what we'll do is we'll come back, apply a highlight with the base colour. Then we'll do a mix of the base colour, and for the second highlight will be a mixture of the base colour and sunny skin tone. And then for the third highlight, which if you're happy with, can be your final highlight, will be just sunny skin tone on its own. Though what I find is it's a little bit better to mix a tiny amount of white into the sunny skin tone, just to make it stand out a bit more. So that's what I normally do. You can also keep applying various coats of wash to it to tone down if you go too bright. So what I'm going to do is we're going to let him dry, because we need to let the paint sit a little bit before we start putting the washes on, or it'll all come off. So sit tight and we'll be continuing in a second. Well, it'll be a second for you and it'll be about 20 minutes for me. Okay, now we're going to add the shadows to the flesh using our burnt sienna artist acrylics, or artist watercolour. So I just have a small bit of it on my palette, just mix with a bit of water, make into a wash. I'm just going to start applying it into the face flesh areas. You can go as heavy as you like, depending if you're trying to go for someone with or how would you say, maybe even a kind of sunburned complexion, or so again, just working into the recesses. As you can see, it's automatically made a massive difference to the face, the flesh areas. It's added tonal differences, it's added depth, it's added a bit of realism in. Now this takes about anything between an hour to, depending how damp it is or how much moisture in the air is, there's about so it'd be anything from an hour and a half to 24 hours to set. Most of the time it will dry within an hour to 2, and probably be workable to apply layers over within 20 minutes. So it's normally dried fairly well within an hour, dried fully within 24 normally, and workable for, so you can put a layer of this down, wait say 20 minutes, and then put another layer over it. The beauty as well is that what I normally do is I wait for about 15, and when it's still somewhat wet, but I'm not using the dark flesh as the first highlight, and I'm going straight to this colour, and I start wet blending them together. I'll do that in a different video. Hang on now. in case you think I'm doing, I'm lining up my pipe. Yes, I'm young and I smoke a pipe, and that's tobacco. I know I do not think I'm Sherlock Holmes. I'm more of Moriarty. Now, so as we can see, it's gone into the fingers, the cracks, the crevices. And we'll need this, because we're putting another layer over this. We'll let this set for about 15-20 minutes at least. If you were intending just to put this coat on and leave it at that, which you could, if you were just trying to get a quick tabletop standard and you wanted to get your men onto the field to fight as quick as possible, you could possibly get away with that. Or if you're a beginner model maker and skin and flesh is still a bit kind of overwhelming, that is a very reasonable result. And again, you can leave it at that. So the whole idea is, I'll keep giving tips and trades depending on your skill and how comfortable you are. Do you know, I'm trying to do it in such a way that any skill level can do this, and it's designed to be accessible to everybody. So I'm just going to keep chatting for a few minutes about what I'm up to. So I'm going to be adding a lot more to this video series. I'm going to be adding a lot more battle reports, historical refights, model reviews, painting guides, historical lectures about various tactics, battles. I'm also going to be trying a thing called a live diorama, which is going to be creating full scenes with atmospherics, lighting, smoke, fire effects, the works. That's coming down the line. Me and my mate Mark are working on. He's a graphic designer, so he's going to be working on some. He's going to kind of consult with some effects, and he also does electronics. So like we're going to try to start doing sequence LEDs, the likes. We're doing lighting and flickers and fires, and it's going to be used as backdrops to help tell narratives of famous battles and things like that. So this channel is going to grow on this section. On the model section, there's plenty more models coming up. I have another Panzer I ready to go. I have the B-17 ready to go. I have a 25 pounder on the go. So, do you know what I mean? I'm trying to make this channel as accessible to everybody, regardless of your interests, whether it be wargaming or model making, because both of them are they're both similar. So that's great. Thanks for listening. Hi all, we're back again. I just left the wash set for about 40 minutes an hour, and I was ready to push to come out of the shed because it was getting battered by hailstone. It snows 1 minute, then we get battered by hail. It's one of those really random weeks of weather. It was beautiful sunshine earlier this morning. It's just coming on midnight now, so I'm just going to do this part and then I'll leave it down. And mind you, I still have a week to produce this video, but I kind of want to get it done in one setting, you know. It's good when you get into the frame of mind for painting, which is always important, you know. That's actually something I find very important for batch painters. Well, actually any painter. I don't want to be constantly making the distinction between wargame modelers and static modelers. There isn't a definition between them. One of them, it's just probably the means to the end, as in the finish that both disciplines strive for is slightly different, as in because the techniques are different. And that's actually what I like about differences. There's some beautiful wargaming, they go for lovely vibrance, whereas in static modelling is actually very subtle vibrance type things. There's little differences. Anyone who does both will know what I'm talking about. So what's important is frame of mind while painting. Like that's why it took me a year to do the Napoleonic guides I showed in the first page, or the first video of this, the first episode, was just simply because I would burn out so quickly that I would just leave them alone for a few months and do some standard models in between. But I've come up with a system now that I might just do, say, 4 models a week in between my standard builds. In that case, I'm producing them at a good, nice, quick rate, but I'm also, not spending too much time. Okay, so I'm talking too much. Let's get down to painting. Okay, so what I'm trying to say is try to get into the natural flows of painting and try to break it up as much as possible. Listen to other people's videos if you're painting, follow along maybe with this tutorial and many of the other amazing tutorials online. I was watching a great painting tutorials from a very talented artist. Her channel is War Games, Soldiers and Tactics, I believe, or War Games, Soldiers and Strategy. Amazing quality of work. I will put a link to her channel at the bottom of this. She's a fabulous painter, very talented, and kind of blows me out of the water. But it's not a competition in the end, though. We're all a bit different, and I consider her an artist, whereas myself, I'm just a painter. So now what we're doing is we're coming back with dark flesh tone, and we're going back over. So this is our first highlight. So we're using our base coat as a highlight over the wash, and we're leaving the wash in the crevices and in the shadow areas. So we're kind of focusing on the nose, the forehead. Now I'm going to switch my brush now, I think, because this brush is too big. So it's working on this. So building it up. They talk about filth on the radio, which is only in Ireland. I imagine this would be a taboo subject in most other countries. It is quite late, so they're kind of talking about kind of adult humour type stuff. So, but yeah. So what I'm doing here is I'm just working along the chin, the cheekbones, the ears. Well, the ears are kind of obscured by his hair, which is a good thing. It's one less thing to paint. The forehead, like I mentioned, and we're just trying to get him to stand out. The lads are kind of like his versus hers, if you get me. Like they're kind of debating who's better, soccer players, men or women. So they're kind of ripping the piss out of each other, all in good faith. No, they're not being sexist, but just have a laugh. So I'm just kind of working it in. Now I can see myself coming back to apply the wash into to particular regions where I've gone in too much or I slipped. So you can use the wash as a means to repair work and to reset your work. So it's like I kind of accidentally went into his eye and took away the shadow. So I'm going to reapply that into his eyes, perfect, and around the hand. You could actually do this in between if you wanted to. There's something stopping you from going back between each highlight with a very, very thin glaze, which would be, say, 5%, 10% burnt sienna oil or acrylic to 80 to 95% water or thinner, depending on what medium you're using. I just kind of just replaced it, but still I haven't lost the detail I made pop. So that's where we're at. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix up our second highlight, or third, yeah, sorry, second highlight, with Sunny Flesh Tone and white, flat white, in a 50-50 pattern, in a ratio of 50-50. So now we're slowly working up the tones. These heads, they're beautifully detailed, but they're also very small, and they can be a little bit hard to do. Normally when I'm painting, I actually have the heads separately and have them all glued onto sticks. So it looks a bit kind of creepy or sick when someone walks into my workshop to see all these little heads on fucking stakes everywhere. But it just makes it easy, and like that's why he's not wearing. That's why his backpack isn't glued on either, so I can get in and work with that. It just makes life that bit more easier. And the whole idea is, don't make life difficult on yourself. If you think keeping pieces off the model to reattach later, in figure painting, that's grand. You know, in armour, like tank modelling, it's trying to do it in one piece is normally the preferred way, but in figure painting you can do it like and reassemble, you know. So now I mixed a 50-50 white sunny skin tone mix, and I'm going to start working in the highlights. So the knuckles of the hand, oh no. Okay, I made a mistake. What I do is I just damped my brush and pulled back and erased the detail, or erased the mistake. So what I'm going to do is actually going to go up around the nose. Geez, this little head has been an awful use to paint. I keep getting it down onto his eye, but again I can keep going back with the wash. Now he's looking a bit rough, so what I'm going to do is, well, this is good because this kind of shows what happens when it looks like you're starting to lose control. It's not as defined as I would like it to be, so what I'm doing is I'm going to put a wash over that again to try to tone it down and try to salvage this. I'm also going to kind of go down to the knuckles and start picking out knuckles. So what I do for painting hands, I draw with the lighter colour from the knuckles vertical lines, and it gives you the idea of the tendons in the hand. It's a very convincing way. So what I'll do on this hand here. So again with the lighter colour, just like that, just the vertical lines back. Now, so what I'm going to do is, especially on the face, I'm going to off camera just clean it up a little bit, just with the same colour. I'm going to give it another little wash and just reapply, because just what happens is I got a bit of lighter paint into his eyelid. Now it's not a big problem. We're going to come back in with a furry like kind of off-white duck yellow, duck white or egg white type of colour to paint his eyelids, or the pupils of his eyes, but we'll come to that later. So I'm just going to do this off camera and we'll be back in a second, so see you in a second, lads. Alright, so what I did there was I just off camera I applied some wash into the eye sockets, around the nose and into some of the areas around the hands, just to tone down where I went in a bit too heavy. So now we're going to start putting in more highlight, and for the highlights we're using our zero brush. So in the last highlight what we did was we used a mix of dark flesh and sunny skin tone. Now we're going to just use sunny skin tone on its own out of the bottle. Now, so I'll just mix a bit of water into my palette. So now we apply straight sunny skin tone to places like the knuckles, the fingers, but we leave a little bit of space between each knuckle and where we put the highlight to give an idea of shadow. So applying highlights to the top of the fingers. Okay, now I'm going with the flesh tone just to the bridge of the nose. I'm also going to go to the brow, so the forehead and eyebrow area, which you can kind of see. Even though technically it would be shadowed under the brow of the helmet or the shako of the hat, but so just again, I'm picking out the fingertips. Jawline. And there. So it's getting there. It's a bit of a squidgy face, I must say, but I figured out the first time around actually a little bit of an easier face to paint. They keep coming back to this because I keep losing the second shadow, but it doesn't really matter. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to go for our final highlight. I have a feeling I'm actually going to wash the entire thing in a kind of a numbery wash as well, kind of get a bit of dirt and grime. Try to use the way the face is kind of, it's not kind of quite going the way I want it, but it's still adequate for this type of figure. It's not, these aren't always the easiest of figures to paint at times, because there's a lot going on. But I will. I'm not making excuses, but if I actually use a different facial scope, I'll do grand. It's just the way it goes. So now what I'm doing is I'm making up my final highlight colour, which is a mix of white, flat white, and sunny skin tone to make kind of get an off-white. I'm not going to give any ratio for that. That's at your own discretion. So you eyeball that one and just kind of pick whatever colour makes you suits you. So let's put a bit of water, and there we go. Okay. And the final highlight is going to be on the knuckles, the button of the nose, the fingertips again. So I'm going to go to each knuckle now, tap. And just there. So again, you take your time, keep your paints nice and thin. One thing I have noticed on the second go of this, I'm doing it a bit quicker because I kind of, in the first video I've thought about what I need to say and what I need to explain, which is good. Okay, just kinda. So okay. And then what I do is, if it's too stark, just dampen your brush and pull down, and in effect wet blend everything together. So I'm happy with that. I'm going to do the other hand, and I say I'm going to apply a very light wash of skin tone just to blend everything together, because I can see there's slight extremes in colour. So I'm just going to do the other hand off camera, and then we're going to put a very thin wash of burnt sienna just to see. Now normally like this would be done, but if you want, I just want to see what happens if I put a wash over it. So I'll be back in a second. So here we go. I just finished off highlighting the other hand, and what I did was I just took a bit of burnt sienna, put about 30% more water into the mix already, so it's already watered down at the beginning, so it was about 80% water to 20% acrylic, and then I put a small amount on my brush, wipe off most of it, and just apply this in a single direction like a dry brush in a way, and just toned everything down. So the last part we're going to do, I think we might give him a bit of a stubble. I don't know, there's too much going on in his face as it is, I think, because his face is kind of, it's smooth if you get me. There's not a lot of definition expression wise in his face, so I kind of don't want to go too much at him because it might be too much going on in the eye. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take I'm going to take white and soy skin tone, mix it up again, this time with a greater amount of white to make an off-white kind of duck. I keep saying for some reason I keep saying duck white, more of an egg white colour, and that's going to be the pupil. There we go. So I just mixed it up off camera. Okay, I got 2 minutes left. Okay, I want to get this done. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do this off camera. I'm going to switch to the smallest brush I have, which is my 000. This brush. Okay. Small amount of paint, and the trick about doing eyes is don't do dots, do slashes for the pupils. Oh, sorry, yeah, slashes for the pupils and dashes for the irises. Or sorry, slashes for the whites, dashes for the irises. So slash and dash, single motion, little bit of paint on your brush, nothing crazy. Okay, so the pupils are done. So you can see there. Don't avoid using white for painting the whites of your eyes. Use like an off-white, a light sky grey, a kind of an egg white colour. Don't go straight white because it'll draw too much attention and it will stand too much. You're trying to get everything to look like it belongs. And for the irises, I paint them in German grey most of the time, which I have there lying around here somewhere. So for the irises, I'm going to take out a small amount of Panzer Grey. You can do this in black if you want, but I just prefer doing this colour, and it's going to take it off camera again. Okay, eyes are painted in, so just little dashes. What I'll do is I'll take some photographs at the end of this video and put them on the end so you can actually have a look-see yourselves, and just in case this camera doesn't show it. Okay, we're just going to add the finishing touches to the face, and we'll call all the flesh areas complete. So what I've done off camera was I've added in his hair. I just went in with flat black and added in the sideburns and the hair on the back of the neck and whatnot. No real point showing that. Everybody will do that quite easily. So the last part I'm going to do is I'm going to add a bit of stubble, kind of give him a rough shaven look. What I've done is I've made a 50-50 mix of neutral grey and Panzer Grey using Vallejo model colours. So I made a mix of that and then made a wash of about 20% paint to 80% water. And I'm going to apply very thin glazes from the jaw line to the lower cheeks and across the lip, the brow of the lip, and across it again to give them a roughly shaven look. So I'm going to start now. Again, keep your paint as thin as possible. I always find that's a bit too much. Try not to make it pool at any point. And what we should do is we should build this up over consecutive layers rather than trying to get it in one go. And if it's too much, just dampen your brush and actually spread it around as if you were applying the normal paint. That's a bit slightly too heavy. My apologies, my phone is going. Phone's actually quite popular. Nobody normally will be talking to me, so I'm just not cool enough. So we're wrapping up this part of the video, which is just the first part of the tutorial. I don't want it to be overly long, so I'm going to cut it at this, and then we're going to move on to part 2 of Musket Mondays, which will be a quick introduction. I'm going to do a series of videos maybe every second week of Musket Mondays of rules and tactics for black powder. So even those of my friends in the model making community, even if it's not your thing, you still might want us to hang around and have a look see. You might find it interesting, or it might just make for something a little bit different. Do you know? Again, I'm not trying to force anyone into it, but you know, if you find it interesting, you have a look see anyway, and if not, we'll always have a look in the next episode. In the next episode I'll be covering we'll have a little kind of history discussion. So part 1 of next video of episode 3 will be continuing with the uniform, and then in part 2 we'll be talking about some elements of history regarding the age. I don't know what I'm going to do yet for that. I have a few ideas, so we'll just have to wait and see that. So again, I'm beginning to add it in slowly but surely. Now some people might not want to do this, and that's absolutely fine. I just like adding a little element of it. Just, I think it adds a bit of character. And then what we should do then is go back in and do the lips. So, as you can see, I've added in. It should be nice and subtle. It doesn't have to be too doesn't have to be too defined, because again, if anyone, no, well, we're men, unless there might be a few ladies, which I hope. I'm not going there actually. No, well, we haven't shaded after a while. It's not like a deep grey when your stove begins to appear. It's just kind of like a translucent colour. Your skin tone is all shown through at all times. So that's the best way to approach this, unless they're growing their beards back, in which time the colours begin to change from that kind of bristly, kind of greyish brown colour, depending on your hair colour, to the actual colour of your beard. In my case, when I grow my beard out, it's ginger. I am not a ginger, I'm half ginger, but I'm Irish, so I'm allowed to be. Call me a ginger and I'll kill you. But so yeah, in the next video, part of this video, we're going to talk about the first elements of black powder. So I'm going to talk about the units, the various unit sizes, some of the stats, and I'll talk a little bit about orders. So I'm going to break out my demo board and one or two small units or representations of units. So it might not be full scale stuff, but just enough for you to appreciate it. So I'm not going to give you the entire rule set, like, but I'm going to do my best to give you the best guide to it. So what I'm going to do now, I'm just going to go back to the lips. So I'm going to go over the lips a bit, so I'm just going to go just apply it with dark flesh tone. When that dries down, I'll actually apply the wash back into them. But that's the face done, for the most part. It's nice and simple. Again, it's not hard. So again, for the flesh area, we'll just do a quick recap. I'll put some pictures of the finished thing in the end. So what I'm going to do is, when his upper lip dries, or his lips dry, I'm just going to apply a very thin wash of burnt sienna back into it to give that depth, to just give a bit of depth. So I'm just going to quickly go back to the various colours we used, and then we'll call this part done. And in the next episode, we'll get down to doing the uniform. Okay. So the three colours you will need are such. So first things first, undercoat in black. A couple of coats until you're happy with thin coats of dark flesh, Flavio model colour. Then we put the wash of burnt sienna over it, let it dry, or let it dry sufficiently. Then we put the first highlight will be back again to the base colour of dark flesh. Then we will make a mix of dark flesh and sunny skin tone as our second highlight, and for our final third highlight we will, depending on the complexion, we either go straight sunny skin tone, or we will add a little bit of white to lighten it. So yeah, these are the colours you'll need. So you'll need dark flesh tone, sunny flesh tone, white, and burnt sienna. Okay, so I'll put up some pictures of the finished thing, of the finished product of his face, so you get a better look, because I know I can't come in too close to this camera. And then we'll break it down. I'll break out the demo board and we'll have a quick talk and chat about black powder, and that will be episode 2 done then. So I'll chat to you in the next part. Stay tuned. See you in a few minutes. Hi all, and welcome to part 2 of episode 2 of Musket Mondays, which is going to be our introductory discussion of black powder. So I just have the demo board broken out, and I have my Russians just arrayed, which we're going to talk about I think about how to start the video. I think the best way to start is with the basics, and we'll have a quick discussion on units. The game has, I'm trying to think now, it has 4 types of units, which range from a tiny unit of about 6 to 7 models, a small unit of say 6 to 10 models, a standard unit, and a large unit. So it's four types of units, and these can be done to simulate any type of troop. So you can go from, say, an under strength unit to a recently raised or reinforced battalion of troops. Small units then can represent skirmishers or militia or irregular levy troops that may have been raised from the locality. Standard troops would be like this. This is why I rate my standard troops are just like a unit at near full strength, that their normal combat efficiency, where a tiny unit could easily represent a small garrison, maybe a small hilltop fort, an OP or sentry position, or a picket, which are basically troops aligned as an early warning system, or even maybe a bunch of survivors trying to cling to survival. So the idea of those unit sizes are to allow you as a player to create any situation, whether you're trying to recreate a battle from history or a scenario to make life interesting. Each of these unit types will have its own style of play. So a tiny unit is going to be very, very fragile. It will not be able to take much abuse at all. A small unit will probably also be quite fragile, but have a little bit of survivability, whereas a standard unit, well, they're the benchmark, run-of-the-mill. They're quite flexible, and a large unit is very they can be very hard to stop. They can take a lot of punishment and damage. Along with these, we'll couple that with special rules that we'll talk about later on. So then how it works is, in this game, units play together. So it's not just one unit, another unit, and each unit is coupled, or several units come together and they couple under a brigade. So here's my small brigade. In the game is allowed to allow the player to choose. You can have as many units you want in your brigade, or as few units. I normally recommend having at least 2 infantry units per brigade to give you a bit more tactical flexibility. So here we go. Here's my brigade of 2 line infantry units and an artillery, a small battery. In the game, a single gun is represented as a battery. So it's not like so you don't have to buy multiple guns to represent batteries. Just one gun will represent the battery, which we'll talk about in a bit. And then each brigade is commanded by the brigade commander, which is this chap here. Then your army. So you can play any way you want in this game. So you can just play with a single brigade if you wish. But if you're refighting battles, like in the back of the Black Powder rulebook, which I have here, I'm just going to quickly pull up an order of battle. There you go. So this is the Sudan, and we can see the order of battles. Each one of these are brigades. So the army has one commander-in-chief. So if I was playing a large battle with multiple battalions, or brigades should I say, I'd have, say I have 3 brigades. I'd have 3 brigade commanders over each of the individual brigades, and one commander-in-chief, or the army general, who's over everything. And he would be similarly like him, he'd be a single model. And the idea is, each brigade commander can issue an order, which we'll talk about now in the next couple of minutes, can issue an order to any model in his, or any unit in his brigade, but only in his brigade. So Commander 1st Brigade can only issue orders to the units that composite 1st Brigade. He can't go over the 2nd Brigade and start making their orders. But the CNC, or Commander-in-Chief, your general if you will, he can make what you call army orders. He can actually give orders across the board. So he can issue an order to every brigade and every unit within that brigade, or a single unit within that brigade. So if something goes wrong, so you try to order through your brigade commander, it fails, your army commander, your commander-in-chief can attempt to call in, basically try to get the units in. Well, to an extent, it's not quite true. Most units only get one activation per turn anyway, but sometimes you're lucky. Also, when units are in a brigade formation, as in when they're all operating together under their brigades, they need to be within 12 inches of each other and 12 inches of the commander. Black Powder will always try to advise you to tweak the rules to suit the environment in which you're playing. I play on, at the moment, it's a 4x4 table. Black Powder is designed with the measurements and ranges to be played on a 6x5 or 6x12. So no, they're massive tables, but they go out of their way to go. So I'm going to reduce all movement and ranges by 2/3 when I'm playing the game. So I'll keep reminding you that when we start doing battle reports, so I'm not leading you astray. Normally it's 6 inches move and 12 inches for cav, but it's possible to make 3 moves a turn, which I'll explain in a few minutes. Other points of reference is that in the game your commanders cannot be targeted. And a lot of people are going, well, what's the sense of that? Well, the logic is simple. In a Napoleonic battle, or a battle in the age of Musket, there's thousands if not hundreds of men taken to the field. A single chap on a horse is a very, very hard target, and 9 times out of 10 he's positioned far behind your troops. Now, on saying that, your commander can join any of these battalions in his brigade if he wishes, or any of these units. And if that unit's destroyed, he goes with them. He's presumed captured or killed. And that can have a detrimental effect on that brigade, because then the commander-in-chief has to take over that brigade, and will if he's already issued orders, he might not issue orders to this particular unit. So I'll talk about that later, because it can have a very negative effect on your brigade. So keep your commander safe. Also, the brigade or the army commander, it's not necessarily always a good idea to issue army commands through your commander-in-chief, for the simple reason, if you roll a double 6, you blunder your orders. I'm going to talk about orders in a minute. Where basically something's gone wrong, an order's being misinterpreted, or just simply being ignored, or some hothead battalion commander thinks he knows better. So you go to a table and you roll a dice and you compare what happens. So, and it makes an involuntary movement. So wherever the score it has, you come forward to the number, and each number will tell you what to do, which we'll talk about in a minute. Blunders can be particularly dangerous, but also adds a very interesting element. The order element is very true to the time, and I'm going to talk about that in a moment. And also, as you can imagine, your CNC, your commander-in-chief, issuing an army order, an army command, and he blunders. Your entire army, all your brigades, imagine you have an army of 6 brigades. Well, they all blunder together because he's after issuing a command to all of them. So your plan goes out the window. So it's better to actually just issue commands through your brigade commanders, because it's a bit safer, and then if anything goes wrong, your CNC can attempt to rally units and use like follow me orders, where he can come in and personally take command of a unit and push them into combat. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is the next step now we're going to talk about, which is, I think out of all of them there's different formations and all that. We'll cover them in actual battle reports. They're easier to see in operation. The easiest thing to talk about at the moment is the orders. And the orders are something that took me a little while reading the rules to get my head around. I'm actually going to show how it works here. So I'm going to reset the little board here and we'll continue. Okay, so sit tight. Okay, and we're back. So I've set up a scenario here of a Russian advance guard of a battalion, led personally by their battalion commander. I like to lead from the front, very gallant of them, are advancing into contact with a French battle column. And the battle column being the French preferred the battle column over the line of battle, which is the formation the French are in, or the Russians are in, should I say. And I'll explain what happens. So we're going to continue this contact. So I'm going to talk now quickly about how the game works. So the Russian commander has no intention of letting the enemy just close on him and smash them in close quarter fighting, as columns are particularly lethal in close quarter fighting, but are vulnerable to mass musket and artillery fire. So he, like in the game, all commanders have what we call a staff rating, and the staff rating is a reference to how competent a commander he is. 5 being the lowest, meaning he's the lowest quality of commander, where he's just used his political influence and his financial gains to simply buy a commission, which was very common during the Napoleonic times and before and after, where men would just simply buy commissions to up their social standing. Okay, and 9 being the highest is the most competent of the command ratings. So meaning that he's a born leader, a military genius, and he's respected by his men. Normally 7 and 8 are probably the most common, being competent commanders who've perhaps risen up the ranks. You know, you can assign any type of backstory you want, or you can model it on a real living person. So no, if you're playing Napoleon, you could have him a staff rating 9, even though I think that's a bit too generous, because Napoleon's a good commander, but he's not, from the books I read, he makes just as much mistakes as the next person, but it's just that he makes the overall his strategy is normally flawless, but he has to amend his tactics almost constantly, but that's what makes him a good commander. Okay, so in this case, I'm going to give this Russian Lieutenant Colonel here, I'm going to give him a staff rating of 8. So he's a good solid commander. Let's say he's risen from the ranks, which it was rare, it did happen, and anyone who did rise from the ranks often used to get a bit of stigma, because they weren't gentlemen, they didn't arise from the social classes, they didn't come from the bureaucracy and the aristocrats. But we just say this chap has risen from the ranks, and he's a hard fighter, he's learned how to fight, and the men love him, so he's a competent commander. He's a staff rating of 8. Okay? Now, for him to engage and fight with the enemy, you need to do a thing called, he needs to issue an order. And if there was multiple units from his brigade, he could issue one command, or a command to all of them. But since there's just one battalion following him, he's just going to issue command to this battalion. Now, since he has a staff rating of 8, I take 2 dice and I roll them together, and I combine the score I get from both, and I'm trying to roll under his staff rating. Okay? And for every value I get under his rating, okay, so say, I'll explain this way. I roll my dice, okay, and I get exactly 8 on the dot, so I get a 4 and a 4. Okay, so that means I've just made his command rating. That gives me 1 movement, or 1 action. And everything's an action, so firing is an action, advancing is an action, wheeling on the spot's an action, changing formation is an action, okay? Okay, if I roll 2 under his value, so I roll a 6, I get 2 movements, okay? And if I roll 3 under, I get a 5, I get 3 movements, 3 actions. The maximum actions you can ever have are 3, okay? Regardless of how many values you roll under your staff rating, 3 is the most you'll ever get. So it's regardless, if you roll a 2, you don't get 6 actions, you only get 3, okay? And that is a very unique and important element of this game. Now, I said in the last video that soldiers only move 6 inches. They do not. That's my apologies, and I'll amend that now. On page 32 of the rulebook, soldiers move 12 inches, as do limbered artillery and wagons. Cavalry move 18 inches. Man-handled artillery move 6 inches, and man-handled battalion guns move 12 inches, and also horse artillery move 12 inches also. Now, the reason, so you can imagine an infantry unit that gets 3 movements, or 3 actions, has the potential to move 36 inches in one go. Now that in this table would literally bow-table this position. That's too much. But again, the game's designed to be played at this type of scale, or on this type of movement scales, on a table measuring 6 by 12. So that's why those big movements are needed, just to keep the game moving. But the rules do stress from start to finish to always modify the rules to suit the environment in which you're playing, which I love about this game. So this is only a 3-foot little demo board. So I'm going to half all the movements and all the firing ranges, just to make things a bit fair, and so you can actually see it in operation. So instead of moving the prescribed 12 inches, we're going to be moving 6 inches. Okay? So that means at the most, if I get 3 actions, I can move 18 inches. Okay. Now, to issue an order, you must issue the order out aloud, verbally and clearly. And this is important when trying to calculate how many actions you will need to complete that order. So, my battalion commander will issue the command, so I'll issue the order. I will move, instead of saying I'll move this unit up, they try to, if you've researched your units and you know the unit's names, by all means use them. So I'm going to pretend this Russian unit, I'm going to give them the battalion number of the Connacht Rangers. So I will move the 88th Battalion of Foot, or Regiment of Foot, up to this T-junction to close with the enemy and fire. Okay? So by saying it like that, I know I'm going to need 1 action to move. I'm going to probably need 2 actions to get there and a third to fire perhaps. So at the minimum I need 2 actions to close. Regardless of what you roll, the infantry or any unit will always do their best to complete an order, even if it falls short. So if I roll just 8, so I get 1 action, and I can only move 6 inches, they will make that move and then try to complete it again in the next turn when you roll again. So that's the best way to describe it. So I have my 2 dice, and I need 8 or less, so I get a 6. So that's 2 actions under. So that means I can move 12 inches. So what I do is I take my tape measure and measure out 12 inches for the foot. And what I do is I measure, as you can see here in the corner, the unit with the flags. That is my commander, my battalion commander, and I measure from him. So that will just put him about here. Now, some people, if you want, you can just put a little marker so you know where to move them. Basically, we'll move him up to here. And then everybody moves abreast with him. All orders, all movements and all formation changes are made off the commander. And that's actually how they would have been done in real life. The banners had other roles other than just decoration and regimental pride. They were also a marker for formations. They were the point of reference for soldiers down the line if they were doing a wheel, that they'd wheel off the axis where the banners were. And also for signalling. Same with the drum beats would do different things. And also for commanders who could be a few hundred meters, if not a kilometre or 2 behind them up on the hill, could track their progress too. So okay, so we got the 2 movements. Okay, and now we'll just pretend the French. So it goes on to the Russian or the French turn, because I'm out of range to engage, or am I actually? So I've halved all the ranges. So a smoothbore musket's 18-inch range. I'm going to bring it down to 9 inches, and we're out of range, as we can see. Now there's a thing called a free move, or an initiative move. Okay, an initiative move is when the enemy closes into a certain range of you. Normally it's within 12 inches of you, and that's where the battalion commander, not the brigade commander, but the battalion commander, is basically referencing the battalion commander making his own judgment. So if a unit closes in within 12 inches of him, he can make what we call an initiative move, meaning that the commander is reacting to the enemy directly to each front, which allows him to move into contact, withdraw, or fire, or close into close quarter fighting. So it gives him 1 movement, and that can be very handy. Certain units in different scenarios will give us say we're playing a game with a picket. Since the picket's away from the army and out of command of everybody else, because everybody needs to be within 12 inches of each other to keep in command distance, there are certain units that have a thing called the Marauder Special Rule that means that they do not need to be in command distance of any unit for them to make their command rolls. And this is the case for horse artillery that can dash around the board, putting down fire, and then dash back. Okay? But we'll talk about that again later. But there are certain units and certain scenarios in which units are allowed a free movement regardless. So they get an initiative move regardless of what's happening around them. So that's often the case for, say, a picket, which would be an infantry screen of a few troops on the far end of the board. They're expecting the enemy. So if the enemy arrive, well, they're way out of range of their own troops, so they need a free move for them to do something. So that could be for them to fire or to return back to their front lines. So no, it just gives a player a lot of flexibility and freedom for gaming, and no, because this is trying to be as enjoyable as possible. Also, there is no point system in the rulebook. This is simply, you look up your history book and you bring what was there, if you will. No, those 3 battalions of X amount of units. You can try to recreate that, or how I like to say, you just bring your models and play. This isn't really competitive gaming. This is not like Warhammer, which is number crunching and power gaming, where you're just trying to win. This is more about enjoyment. It's more like a gentleman's game type way, where you just go have a bit of crack. Now, there are supplements from Black Powder, from Warlord Games that produce it, that cover various campaigns. Like they have one for the Peninsula War with the British and French, and one with the 100 Days campaign, again with the British and French. And there are what we call army lists and point systems in that, which is just trying to make things more fair. But again, you don't have to use that. It is an honor-based system, as long as you tell your opponent what you're bringing, or give you an idea, or both you agree that we're bringing all our collections together, even if there is an imbalance. And often battles are fought with imbalances, but players can add environmental things like put rivers, position their troops in such a way to make up that numeric difference. You can give them special rules to make them a bit more steady, a bit more survivable under fire, so they don't break. Because how it works is every unit has a thing called it's a stamina. Most units have a stamina of 3, and a stamina is basically how much how much fire they can take in combat. So here's my wound marker. It's just a simple little token where the slot cut out. And so for every hit they take that they do not save, they get a hit. Okay? So that's 1, and then most units can only take 3. Okay? And once they make 3 to become shaken or disordered, and they have to take what we call a break test. And I'll cover that when we get to the shooting stage. So what we'll do is, I don't want this video to be overly long. It's a long enough video, the tutorial already, and next week we'll continue this engagement, and we will see what happens when the French begin to close into distance. And we'll also start talking about formations. This is just about the orders. I want to keep it simple, and I want to keep it kind of as precise as possible. So the orders, how it works is you try to roll under the staff rating, and for each value you get under the staff rating, it's an extra move. So if my roll is equal to the staff rating, I get 1 movement. If my roll is 1 or 2 less than the staff rating, I get 2 movements. And if it's 3 less, I get 3. And I can only ever get 3 movements, regardless of how good my score is. Only 3. Okay. So, and also obviously the lower the number, the harder it is to roll under it. So a 5 is very difficult to roll under. And also if you roll over the number, you fail and the unit cannot do anything. So you kind of want to get commanders with a staff rating from 6 up, because you have a good chance of rolling that number. So the higher the better. The lower the harder it is to actually roll under it. And then if you blunder, which we'll cover in the next video as well. So next video we're going to talk about is firing and close quarter combat and break tests. So we'll keep going. Or actually, the next video we'll just deal with firing and formations actually, and then the next one will be close quarter and break tests. We'll just do it that way. I want to keep it nice and simple. So I just want to say thank you for watching, and stay tuned for episode 3. And I hope you're all enjoying this. And even if you're not a war gamer, I hope this is kind of proving this to be something a little bit different and enjoyable nonetheless. So thanks very much for watching, lads. I'm going to sign off now. So I'll see you all in the next episode, and keep safe and watch out for those buses, lads. Bye bye.